Hi everyone, thanks for watching. You can support our work on our website ageoftruth.tv. And please like our videos, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, BitChute and Brighteon. And remember to hit the bell for notifications. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook. To be sure not to miss any of our shows, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website ageoftruth.tv.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Age of Truth TV. I'm Lucas Alexander in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's the 27th of August 2021 and our special guest today is a Gnostic and Telistic shaman. He's an American researcher, lecturer and author of the acclaimed book Not in His Image, a fascinating interpretation of the Gnostic writings from the Nag Hammadi library found in Egypt in 1945 that reveals eye-opening truths about Gnosticism in an ancient civilization, Archon dominance, and the secret history of the world. He has now updated and reissued the book with fascinating new material, very relevant of today in regards to the world situation. What is reality? What is illusion? We will be discussing it today with John Lamb Lash. Good evening from Copenhagen, Denmark, and a very warm welcome to our special guest joining us today, the great John Lamb Lash, joining us from Galicia in Spain. It's wonderful to have you on, and it's great to welcome you to Age of Truth TV.
An exceptional pleasure, Lucas. I was thinking about meeting you, and myself said to me, or I said to myself, however way you like it, I better put on a little flash on the lash so I look a bit stylish to keep up with this man. So I put my best vest on, and here we are, and it's a great pleasure to be with you.
Oh, great. Oh, absolutely wonderful. That's so much fun. I hope we can meet one day in person.
Yeah, well, you know, the virtual is the virtual, but much rather be there in person, but we'll do fine.
It's not that far. You are in Spain?
I'm in northern Spain, actually.
I'm sure we can have more than one discussion for sure, because you have so much information to share with people, and it's nice to finally have you on the show. So before we begin our talk and discussion with John Lamb Lash today, let me start off by reading a description of the new updated, reissued version of Mr. Lash's book, Not in His Image, which describes the material very well and the book very well. In a nutshell, obviously, of course, and then we can go into the discussion. Since its initial release to wide acclaim in 2006, Not in His Image has transformed the lives of readers around the world by presenting the living presence of the wisdom goddess as never before revealed, illustrating that the truth of an impactful Gnostic message cannot be hidden or destroyed. With clarity, author John Lamb Lash explains how a little-known Messianic sect propelled itself into dominant world power, systematically wiping out the great Gnostic spiritual teachers, the Druid priests, and the shamanistic healers of Europe and North Africa. Early Christians burned libraries and destroyed temples in an attempt to silence the ancient truth tellers and keep their own secrets. Not in His Image delves deeply into ancient Gnostic writings to reconstruct the story early Christians tried to scrap from the pages of history, exploring the richness of the ancient European pagan spirituality, the pagan mysteries, the great goddess, Gnosis, the myths of Sophia and Gaia. In the 15th anniversary edition, Lash doubles down on his original argument against redemptive ideology and authoritarian deceit. He shows how the Gnostics clearly foresaw the current program of salvation by syringe and places the Sophianic vision of life centrally in the battle to expose and oppose the evil agenda of transhumanism, making this well-timed update more relevant than ever. So this is clearly extremely fascinating stuff and takes a bit of concentration to put all of the puzzle pieces together to understand all of it, understand a larger picture which you have been writing about, and the interpretation of the Gnostic writings that you have done, and which now is well updated in your new version of Not in His Image. But I think we must begin the first part of this talk with a basic background description of a few things and concepts for those of our viewers who are not so well researched into what Gnosticism, Gnosis, Sophia, and the Archon kingdom is all about, and for those who do not know your work so well yet. So please, first of all, tell the audience how this incredible journey began for you. Why did you choose to write Not in His Image in the first place 15 years ago in 2006 when it originally came out? And why did you choose to republish it now in 2021?
That's quite a question. I was looking forward to this encounter because I know you're an excellent interviewer. I'll give you the short form. You see, I grew up as a child in a little town called Friendship, Maine, a beautiful fishing village on the coast of Maine. And I was very privileged to have the beauty of nature around me. And naturally, already at the age of 3 or 4, I went out into that exquisite beauty of that place, which I have to say, the harbor of Friendship, Maine is one of the most beautiful places I've seen, and I've traveled a lot in the world. So I was drawn to the beauty of nature. But when I returned to my family, my situation, and the township and the people, they were dominated by a fundamentalist Christian sect. And I realized quite early on, without being able to, I didn't know the word heretic, but I realized that I was a heretic because something in me instinctually could not accept the biblical indoctrination of that little clan of people in that small town. And so I had the ideal opportunity, on the one hand, to go into the beauty of nature, and I spent hours and hours alone walking the coastline, swimming out to the islands, walking in the woods. But I also had the opportunity to confront something which happens to be a massive problem for humanity. And that is the problem of the Judeo-Christian belief system. So basically, I struggled with that. And, you know, children very often know that something is wrong, don't they? They have such an innate sense of truth. They know in the family, in the community, something is wrong, but they can't define what it is because they don't yet have the syntax of the brain developed. So it took me until I was about 16. And I was already rebelling and like not going along the program. But at the age of 16, I discovered Nietzsche. And Nietzsche showed me what I was already thinking and gave me the language. And at that moment, I undertook a great act of defiance. I described this in the original foreword to Not in His Image, which was that I was going to take down this belief system. And that was actually a challenge that I assumed totally on my own when I was 16 or 17 years old. And that led eventually to many steps to writing Not in His Image. And there was a secondary factor that led me to write the book. And that is the factor of the paranormal or supernatural. Now, I personally believe that it is normal to have paranormal experiences. I do. And I believe that all of us from an early age may have this presence of something supernatural or paranormal. But the important thing is to hold on to that experience and develop it into clarity so that you actually know what it is that is impacting you. Well, I had tremendous forces of the supernatural impacting me from the age of 4. And through my life, I had what you might call spontaneous mystical experiences. One of those was the Kundalini event. You know what Kundalini is, right?
Sure, absolutely.
I think it's generally known in more enlightened circles today what Kundalini is. You know?
And it's often, of course, talked about in let's say, when you do tantra, sexual tantra. But of course, this can also happen. It's to do with the spine, and it represents the snake.
That's right. Well, I won't say necessarily that I do tantra. That's a dicey subject. We could talk about that in another interview.
Sure.
But I can assure you that tantra did me. Tantra did me big time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You know, there's various books about raising the Kundalini. The most well-known classic book is called The Serpent Power by Sir John Woodruff. And he talks about the yogic technique of raising Kundalini through the chakras to the head chakra, right? But what is perhaps less well known are testimonials, such as my own, of spontaneous eruptions of Kundalini.
And does that mean that you feel like shaking or tremor or something, that it suddenly happens in the body, like a sudden, like little explosion in there? Because I've heard about people who has those experiences.
It may not be so uncommon, but unfortunately we may not know about it, Lucas, because when it happens, it's incomprehensible. It happened to me when I was 16 years old, and it lasted for 6 months.
What does that mean? That you have those constant eruptions or explosions?
Not continually, but over a period of 6 months, it kept coming back and coming back and coming back over and over again. Now, bear in mind that I was a young boy in high school, living in a town in Maine. And back in those days, you didn't even know what yogurt was, not to mention yoga.
All right.
I was like, what's yoga? What's Kundalini? What are they? I had no idea. It came on. It is a cold electric fire. And it generally comes right up the spine like a lightning bolt. And it was terrifying. It used to happen to me at night. So I would be sleeping in my bedroom, totally innocent teenage boy in high school. And then suddenly I would go lucid. You know, everyone knows what a lucid dream is. Well, suddenly I would be lucid. And the first thought that comes often in a lucid dream is, wow, I can do anything I want. I think I'll go to the moon. I think I'll go look up, what's her name? Some sexy actress. I can go anywhere and do anything I want in the whole universe.
Not the goddess Sophia, but Sophia Loren, maybe.
Yeah, right. Or Scarlett Johansson, whoever, right?
yeah, of this day and age.
Whoever tickles your fancy, she doesn't tickle mine. But anyway, and then something very strange happened, my friend. I'm laying in bed. I go lucid, and I think, okay, now I'm just going to go for it, man. This is incredible. I know I'm having a dream, and all power is fine. And the minute I thought that or said that, I was paralyzed.
Sleep paralysis, is that what you mean?
Yeah, but I was awake. I woke up from the lucid dream in my bed, and I am paralyzed. I guess they call it sleep apnea, right? And it was terrifying because...
Sleep paralysis, some people call it.
Right. I couldn't breathe. And I thought it was going to kill me. This went on, as I say, not continually, but many times over 6 months. And it entirely transformed my personality. Up until that point, I had been I was an A+ student in school. I was very popular. And it turned me into an introvert. It turned me into this sort of James Dean, sulking, strange, aloof creature, And then I started on this long, long journey to understand what is the actual presence of the supernatural and how it works upon us. And that also led to the culmination when I began to write Not in His Image.
So would you say that you got some downloads? It's a computer term, but from some universal connection in some kind of way, or how did you interpret it at this time? Because would you say that this Kundalini experience that happened over 6 months was connected, or is connected generally, to the ability to lucid dream?
Certainly was. I think lucid dreaming is a portal toward the supernatural. But you see, the supernatural, of which I talk about a lot, the paranormal and the supernatural. And by the way, I want to add a qualification. In my experience of the supernatural, which has been ongoing for the age of 4, although there are shocking and frightening moments that can arise, I am profoundly convinced that the supernatural is entirely benevolent. Entirely. Yeah. And the Aeon Sophia, our planetary, is entirely benevolent. So in those cases in which people experience demonic forces or things like this, I do not consider that, this is just my humble view, to be, as a Gnostic, and Gnostics are not humble, okay. I consider that to be the dementia of the human psyche. The garbage and the confusion of the human psyche makes it appear that the supernatural has evil in it. There is no evil in the supernatural. It is nothing but love, beauty, and freedom. But the question is, how do you get there in a steady, clear way, you see? So you have to learn how to navigate in the supernatural. Now, getting back to your question, it's very pertinent. Download. Did I receive a download? I think there are cases in which people have a Kundalini event and they do receive some kind of download. One famous example of that, is Philip K. Dick, the science fiction writer who wrote Blade Runner and many other novels.
All right.
Yeah. Minority Report is based on Philip K. Dick. And he describes in March, I think it was, of 1977, how he was like hit by a Kundalini event and he got a download. My view, my assessment is that you can have it with or without a download. It can just be a wake-up call.
Would you say that this Kundalini event is, well, like a little bit orgasmic that some people talk about? It feels like that in the body, or is it different from that?
Well, there are two ways that Kundalini activates. One is by the spinal channel, and that can be unpleasant. I mean, it is ecstatic, but it's also terrifying. It can be really terrifying. And it's like being hit literally by a lightning bolt. And you are being hit by a lightning bolt. You're being hit by the lightning of the Aeon Sophia, the planetary mother, because her body, which is the earth, is surging with Kundalini. It's called Maha Kundala, which means the big serpent, the big spiral. So she has Maha Kundala, which is in the telluric properties of the earth, and you have Kundalini, which is like the teeny weeny yellow bikini. You have the little version. You have the little pinch of her massive Maha Kundala, you see? But there's a better way to get it, which I prefer. And that is what I call the meltdown. So you refer to sex, and I will graciously follow your lead. Okay? In the best of sex, and this is the best of the best, you have an orgasmic meltdown with your partner. The orgasm goes through you, you tremble. And if you surrender to that trembling, then you just melt into such a soft, beautiful cushion of ecstasy. You can also have Kundalini in that form. It's a cellular meltdown. So it doesn't necessarily take the channel of your spine, which is kind of a very severe route for it to take, but it actually diffuses the entire cellular network of your body, and you feel as if you are a lotus covered with dew.
Some, let's say, sexual therapists or sexual healers or whatever they are, they can actually, some of them have the ability to activate the Kundalini in somebody's spine. But we also know that you have to be very careful in doing that, because that could actually, well, disable people in a way, right? You have to be very careful. This is a very powerful thing and people should be wary of, they should really know what they're doing.
Totally agree. Of course, there are quite a few different techniques and books on tantric sex, things of this sort. I don't do tantric sex as such. I have never been attracted to pursuing those rituals, or the rituals, for instance, of the Kama Sutra and so forth, the various positions. It's not for me. I find it very stilted and not spontaneous. But in really genuine, affectionate sex, you will get to the Kundalini melt. But there is a discipline involved, and it is definitely dangerous to meddle with this power without knowing exactly what you're doing.
But do you know what activated your Kundalini? Was it something from, let's say, another realm? Was it somebody that you were close to or that you knew, but you just didn't know that they actually activated it? Or why do you think this happened? Do you feel that you were a chosen one, that this was a tool to make you go on a certain path, the path that you're on now?
No, I think it was an effect of my adolescent libido.
Must have been quite aggressive, huh?
My libido, I don't know how you would measure it, but at the time that I was an adolescent, it was very high, still is. And I lived in a very repressive environment. And I wanted nothing more than to just be intimate with a girl, to have flesh on flesh, to have the kisses, to have the juices. I wanted nothing but that, and it was not allowed. There was a big taboo. So I'm certain that was one factor. But in another way, I could say, in retrospect, that it was a way that the goddess chose to get to me.
A kind of a spiritual awakening in a way.
Yeah, to lay her power on me and brand me in a way with her power.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, this led you on a fascinating path, and you started researching a lot, and you are an encyclopedia of knowledge, really, about the ancient texts, and you've been going really into studying the Nag Hammadi texts discovered in Nag Hammadi in Egypt in 1945, and there's so much we want to get into there, but if you just want to describe to the viewers that may not know too much about this, how would you describe Gnosis and Gnosticism?
Gnosis, which simply means knowledge, but actually it means a special kind of knowledge. It means really a knowledge of, first of all, the source of life. You know the source. You don't believe in it. You don't make believe. You know the source. That's possible in Gnosis. The second is a knowledge of the human mind, the intellect and the psyche, and how they are designed to work. Because you can operate your mind and your emotions and your intention. That's the trinity of the human being. If you know how it works, like any other machine. Imagine trying to drive a farm machine that harvests corn if you don't know how the machine works, you see? So we have been designed by our divine parents, Sophia and her counterpart, Thelete, in a particular way. So Gnosis is the path of learning where you actually learn how your mental and psychic functions are optimally designed to work, okay? And the third aspect, I guess, would be that you learn in Gnosis to see the big picture here through the narrative, the fallen goddess scenario, which is the biography of the earth. You learn the biography of the earth. For instance, this name, Sophia, which means wisdom. I say Sophia rhymes with desire. Okay, I like that. So Sophia distinguishes it from just a girl's name, Sophia. Right?
All right. Okay. We can use that one if that's what you prefer.
Yeah, I do prefer that, but I don't impose anything on anyone. So when you learn the story that she is a galactic scale star goddess, she existed before she became the earth. And you learn how she designed the human species, then how she turned into this planet. You learn that whole story, and contained in that story is the story of the Archons, the deceivers.
And we definitely want to get into that because we've been talking about that so much on this show throughout the years, and definitely you can explain it more thoroughly than anybody else, I assume. But I just want to ask you a question about knowing and gnosis and Gnosticism. So is there a basic knowing that everybody has that can be applied to each individual's reality? A knowing that can only be true for each unique person, I would expect, and therefore very different from another person's knowing. Or, I mean, how do we know that what we know is real knowing and not an archontic deception?
Well, those are two big questions packaged into one.
We'll take one and then we'll take the other, huh?
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay.
No, there is nothing like your truth. No, there is no truth that is original to one particular person. No, as a Gnostic, I stand strongly against that view. See, the beauty of truth is that it is unity. Truth is unity. And the Gnostics stress this very strongly. And there are different ways to approach it, but the basic way is to say all truth comes from knowledge of the source. And since there can only be one source of the human species and of this reality, then all truth converges at that one source. So why would you even want to go find some truth that is unique to you, your truth, my truth? There's much more joy and pleasure in sharing a truth that is integral to all of us. That's where the power of truth comes into play.
But what if you tell me something and you tell me it's a knowing?
A knowing? What is a real knowing? Basically, you're asking, well, it's something that can be tested. A belief cannot be tested. You see, a belief is just something that someone will believe no matter what proof you give them. Consider the situation today. Look at the people walking around on this planet who believe that there is some kind of microbial pestilence in the air that anyone can get. And it's extremely contagious and it's extremely deadly, right? But when you give them the obvious proof that that is not so, they don't even consider it. They don't consider proof. But truth is based on proof, and truth develops that proof. That's the difference. You have to prove what is true.
But what if you tell me something and you tell me, I know this? I've had many people saying that to me, for example, also in interviews, saying, I know this because it's a knowing. I feel this, and maybe it's not, this is just an example, but maybe it's not my knowing, maybe it's not my gnosis, maybe I don't feel like that, and I can just listen to what that person is saying. So how can there be a universal truth, a united truth, something we are together in understanding? I mean, this is, it is, a lot of people say, I know, and then you say, oh, really? Well, please. How do we get the proof then?
It's simple, Lucas. You simply need to factor in the difference between personal and transpersonal. So sure, on the personal level of you or me as an individual, you know that you feel that in a unique way personally. But on the transpersonal level, where we are all members of this species, it's different. It's different at that level. That's where unity and concordance of knowledge happens. And gnosis is the practice that leads to that unity of knowledge.
So that means that a lot of people, we've also talked about this, that the pineal gland has been calcified, and the connection with the heart chakra and the abilities that human beings had in the past that could maybe even move objects with the power of thought. And we had much more, maybe greater abilities than we are aware of now because of the dumbing down and all of the chemicals in the water and the food and chemtrails, you name it, all of this. But basically, if there is a knowing, this intuition, this feeling of a connection with the universe, why can't people tap into that a little more, understanding or feeling, getting the full picture of what is going on? For example, right now in the world, during this horrendous world crisis, to know and to see that this is a grand, well, deception, orchestrated basically to feed on human beings' emotions. And there maybe we can get into the whole Archon realm as well. But I mean, why don't people get that so-called download or that knowing? It's like people have been detached from understanding or understanding, probably more.
They have been detached from inner standing. You could even use the word deracinated, which means to tear something out at the roots. You know, I am totally confident from my self-knowledge and that of people that I know well, that this innate knowing is present in everyone. And the innate knowing, if it is free, that is the key word, if it is free to grow and develop on its own terms, will lead to unity of truth, and it will lead to a transcendent view. The problem is there's a lot of interference with this innate, intend to destroy it. And there is a lot of mind control and religious indoctrination that interferes with the innate knowing. And this is the situation that we live in at the end of Kali Yuga. You see, there is an innate knowing, everyone has it, but it is under great risk and it is under nefarious attack. And facing that is the challenge of Kali Yuga.
And do you think it's under greater attack at the moment because of this Kali Yuga era and what's happening at the moment? Because more people are waking up, so they want to bombard us with more fear and terror. Basically, isn't that what it all comes down to?
It's as bad now as it's ever going to get, and yet at the same time, there is no better moment to be alive than now.
Do you think that?
I do totally think that and feel that.
All right, that's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because this challenge, I call it the Soviet deceit, the Soviet deception, because you have to bring in the word Soviet, because it really is technocratic communism that's behind all this, okay? And so being hit, and everyone is being hit by this assault of the Soviet deception, there is no greater opportunity for humanity to come together and face the enemies of life than now. They are at their end game. They have played almost all of their cards. They have a few more to play coming in the next 6 months. But they are at their end game and they are desperate and they are running scared because, as you say, many people are getting on to their game. So we're in a fight for life. We're in a battle like none that has ever occurred in history before. And everyone has the opportunity to be a hero in this battle.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that this knowing and more people are waking up and probably, in a way, even without knowing it, getting into becoming more Gnostic? At least a lot of people in the truth movement are. And if you can even master that and understand it more, then maybe you can work with it in a better way and direct it to change your life and how you look at things, because the law of attraction is also a very important law, of course, and the power of thought. But would you say that clairvoyants, for example, are they Gnostics in a way when they get messages from the beyond or the above or wherever they get it from?
No. I stand guilty as charged, okay? I am hypercritical of a lot of things. That doesn't mean that I want to compete with anyone. It doesn't mean that I want to present myself as better than anyone. But I do know that the Gnostic intel and practice is the premium intel on this planet. It's the premium intel. Why? Because the knowledge of Gnosticism comes from intimate connection with the source of life, Sophia, the living planet. That's the source of all the knowledge and intel of Gnosticism. Now, people can have all kinds of fantasies. They can have all kinds of channelings from this and that. But unfortunately, it's just confusion at the end of the day, because it doesn't lead to that unity that we need, whereas the real power to beat this horrible event, you see? So I don't know if that is answering your question. I love your questions, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm really enjoying this. It's not easy to interview me, by the way. Some people don't even want to talk to me. Anyway.
Oh, really? I'm really thrilled to have this conversation. It's absolutely wonderful. No, I was going to say, if you were saying that maybe clairvoyance or channelers or something, that you don't really buy into that. For a lot of people, that is real. That is a real knowing for them, or a real message that they're getting from channeling, from feeling something, tapping into a part in the universe that a lot of people maybe don't have access to. But would you then say that archons could interfere with psychics or mediums or channelers or clairvoyants as well, to give them mis or disinformation?
You could compare the archons to very clever and sadistic pedophiles. Now, one thing that a pedophile or a parasite who feeds on children knows is that children are very impressionable, and children love to pretend and make believe. And indeed, that is a quality inherent in the human species. It's a quality of make-believe, of pretending and playing. And it's a beautiful quality if it's taken in the right direction. So we have theater and art, things of that sort. But the predatory, archontic parasites take advantage of that. They take advantage of the make-believe in people's minds. And yes, indeed, in my estimation, a lot of the channeled material and fantasies that people come up with are actually delusions inspired by the archons. But you see, the beautiful thing is you don't need any of that. You don't need any of that to find your way in life. You don't need to pretend that you're reaching into some other dimension of the cosmos. What you need is to live totally in this dimension, right here and right now. And if you can't live totally in this dimension, how are you going to know how to handle other dimensions? Excuse me, you see? And this dimension of reality is the dreaming of the Aeonic Mother, your divine mother. You're living in her dream. You're a character in her dream. And the most direct way to connect with her is to know that, and to develop your role knowing that you are a character in her imagination. You and I, sitting here today, are characters in the imagination of the Aeon Sophia.
And quite some characters, huh?
Yeah, well, it gets back to the issue of style, you know? And maybe this would be a helpful clarification. Style is really important in Gnosis, you see? Because wisdom and knowledge and transcendent knowledge and spiritual knowledge, whatever you want to call it, always has a style. So for instance, the Vedic teachings have a certain style. The Native American teachings about the about the earth and rituals of nature, that's another style. The Aztecs had their style. That was pretty wild. But likewise, the Zen masters of Japan have their style. It's all about style. And Gnosis is a particular style of handling this wisdom, very sophisticated and refined. It seems to appear probably largely intellectual, but it isn't. I can guarantee you, and I'm sure that my friends and allies and students will back this up, it's about 50% intellectual.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of style, is that why you're wearing these Ray-Bans or whatever they are, the dark glasses today?
Well, truth be told, and this is a personal matter, I have something with this eye, which is a kind of an occlusion of it. So it's veiled. And as a result of that, it disturbs the contrast between light and dark in my field of vision. For instance, if I'm out walking in the bright sunlight, it's very, it looks black to me. The contrast between light and black is irritating to me. It bothers me. So over the last couple of years, since I got this condition, which is going away now, I've taken to wearing these glasses because it softens the light. Even this small light here, it's more comfortable to me.
All right.
Then I got a bit attached because I thought, hey, I look pretty cool with sunglasses on. I think I'll keep them on. I can take them off too. It's no problem.
All right, there you are. Well, it was just that probably maybe some of the viewers would address it or ask, why is he wearing glasses? But it's good that we just covered that, huh?
Yeah, I wear them all the time, routinely. It doesn't have anything to do with looking like a rock star like you.
Well, I'm also a singer, an actor, so But that's beside the point. Anyway, that's great, and style is important if you are able to have your own personal style. It's fun. It's playful in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, style is such a terrible mess in our society, in our culture. When do you see on the street or in some public place a man or a woman, young or old, who just has style? And you just stop, you just stop and say, wow, that's genuine. We are so barraged by control, working through fashion and working through cosmetics and working through all these commercial systems that want to sell us something, that it's very rare to see someone has a genuine style. But getting back to Gnosis is a genuine style of cultivating wisdom. And it stands alone. It stands distinctly apart from major categories of wisdom or other things of that sort, you see. So
could we say, that was one of the questions about Gnosis and about the knowing. Could a knowing also be influenced by these parasitic archons, like maybe some clairvoyants or channels? Certainly not all, but maybe some. We've certainly heard about that as well. Well, deceivers working through people who are a shining light to some.
Yeah, that's called the Luciferic deception, right? In some people's minds. Listen, it's, in my experience, I'll just give you the brutal truth. I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for a long time during the moment when the New Age movement was peaking, and Shirley MacLaine was there, and I've met a fair number of psychics and clairvoyants, and my assessment is that they are narcissists who want special attention. And that's about it.
Well, you tell them.
Just being honest.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
The beauty, Lucas, of this, to get back to the beauty of this what I call the Sophianic vision of life. It is all about beauty. I can't tell you what the reactions I've had in 15 years since I wrote Not in His Image have been of two kinds, always of two kinds. First, people wrote me, I can't believe it. Reading your book has liberated me from 10, 20, 30, 40 years of religious indoctrination and mind programming through religion, particularly Judeo-Christianity. That's one of the messages I get all the time. And the other one is, I can't resist the story of Sophia. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And people are converted by the beauty of this myth and all that it can tell us about ourselves. And that is on the path to a unity. There's only one source of your life, and you're standing on it. I mean, come on. Talk about waking up. The supernatural is all around you. She is supernatural. Beauty is supernatural. And planetary tantra and gnosis, as I teach it, is just bringing you into that mystery, bringing you into that power. That's my whole intention of everything I do.
Mm-hmm. So please explain to our viewers a little bit, because you know so much about this, obviously, about how the Archons originated. Where did they come from? Why are they here? Why have they been allowed to feed on human beings' psyche and emotions and create havoc and global world dominance? I know there's a lot of questions, but did God, Source, Force, Creator, allow this to happen? Or did this just hijack this earthly realm within the Matrix?
Oh, right. Another big package. I'll see if I can sort it out. I have to put on my Archon deflecting glasses now, because they protect me from the Archons, right?
Yes, definitely. So please explain how the Archons originated first, and then we can go into more of the whole package I was delivering there.
I'll do my best. In the first place, to my knowledge, the Gnostic intel and the Sophianic narrative, the fallen goddess scenario, is the only body of knowledge that explains how the Archons originated. Now, people have been talking about the Archons for a long time, and I think I can take credit for introducing that term to the internet around 2002. Okay? I did that because when I brought out the Gnostic material on the website, medhistory.org, I made it my primary objective to explain the Archons. And here you get to a difficult point, and this is where some people fall off the bus. Because the Gnostic narrative, which is a myth, a sacred story explaining the origin of the earth, the origin of the human species, also explains the origin of the archonic parasites, the intruders, psychic intruders. And it explains it in a way that a lot of people don't like. Well, I won't say a lot, but some people are not going to like this explanation. And they'll pass at that point and go look for some
just bring it on. We are all for it here.
Sophia herself accidentally created the Archons. It was an accident, a cosmic anomaly, as they call it, an anomaly. It was something that she did not foresee and something she could not control. Now, this in itself is a difficult piece of intel for those to accept who have a program idea that a god, a deity, a divine being of her scale, which is the galactic scale, could make a mistake or could do something that produced unintended circumstances. So if you are still programmed by the notion that a god or goddess is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-controlling, you're not going to like this story. It's an entirely different story. But the beauty of it is, if you accept this story, you have empathy for the goddess in what happened to her in producing the archons. See? By accident. And she produced the archons due to her passion for humanity. The myth says that she inhabited the galactic core, which is where the aeons or Gnostic gods and goddesses lived, but she plunged out of the core. She's the fallen goddess. She left the core because her desire was so great to see her designer species, humanity, achieve its full potential. And she became involved in the experiment that she set in motion. This is a story that you can only take on board if you have empathy for the goddess. You see, this is a key, great key. So that's how they actually came about. And if you want to know the full story, you go to sophianicmyth.org, and there are the 9 episodes of the Sophianic myth, and you can receive them day to day. Or you can go to Nemata, which is my school, and you can also freely access all the 9 episodes. And also they are now available in an audio version, thanks to our elegant friend Yvonne, who lives down under. She recorded them so you can listen to them. You cannot know your role and responsibility in the fate of the earth if you don't know the story of the earth. And this is a requirement of Gnostic practice today, to know the story of the earth.
And the Archons was created, what, through smokeless fire? Is that how it was?
No, it was created by the impact that her plasmic current had in the galactic arms. You see, inside the core of the galaxy, there is pure living plasma. Luminosity that is alive. But outside, in the realm of the galactic arms, is a different environment. So the narrative says that she plunged from the core out into the external environment of the galaxy. And when she did so, she brought the impact of her own luminosity in such a way that it had a shattering effect. And this shattering effect produced this anomalous species, which is an inorganic cyborg insect-like species called the Archons. This is a great, great story, and it only comes out of the Gnostic sources. Now, I've done my best over and over again to tell this story and to get it across in a way that people can receive it, you see.
So, can you or do you have an idea or thoughts about why something you call an all-powerful god or goddess, Sophia, how can something good create something really evil and parasitic?
That question comes from a syntax in your mind where you have a polarity of good and evil. But I put it to you that if that is operating in your mind, and it is in many people's minds because it's inherent to religious indoctrination, then you can't really ask the right question. That's not the right question because it doesn't address the reality of the situation. You say, first of all, the Archons are not evil. The Gnostics never said that the Archons are evil. There is no evil, cosmic evil.
But the Archons are described as parasites, mind
Right.
parasites, interdimensional in structure, right? And maybe they
Right.
can take form through reptilian aliens or even possess a
Right.
human. And therefore they are demons in Christian terms and the jinns in Islam. and the Chitahuri and for African tribes and other words in other religions. So would you, I mean, if people can be possessed by these demon entities called archons, which means ruler, a master, huh? Why would you not say that it's evil and evil was created if it is well, destroying us more or less, or possessing us to feel bad and feed on our emotions?
I understand this is a difficult question for many people, and it's probably one of the more difficult aspects of the Gnostic message to take on board. So I greatly appreciate you asking this. I'll give you my best answer. The essential way to view the archons is that they are messengers of deceit. So their power is to deceive. And it is true that it is due to the Aeon Sophia, our mother goddess, that their power is even present in our reality. But it is due to us that we allow that delusion to affect us. We allow it to affect us. And that's not her responsibility. She's not responsible for what we allow. And you couldn't have a more perfect illustration of that than what is happening today in the world with this COVID deception. The authorities, which is the name for the archons, say you must obey, say you must do this, say you must do that. And they say you must do it to protect others, and you must do it for public safety. But obviously, by obeying them, you are destroying your entire life. You're giving up everything that is precious to you. It's not Sophia's fault that we allow the authorities to do that to us. That's our fault, you see? So she put the archons into our reality. She's responsible for that. But we're responsible for how we handle them.
But if people are being deceived because they don't know what's going on, because they think it's for the best, because they're part of the illusion we were programmed since we were children, through the educational system, through just our family, everything we were brought up to believe. We think this is the truth. We even think the nature of reality is very different from what it really is. And some of the myths that you talk about, they may also be real, and we can also, use discernment there and ask if that's even the real nature of reality here. But certainly what you're saying, what's going on in the world right now, really describes big time what is going on, also with people getting these things that we can't mention any longer on the air. So, I mean, this is evil, John, isn't it? Evil was created.
No, evil was not created by the goddess. Evil is our doing. Evil is what human beings do when they fall under that delusion and then turn around and force that delusion on others.
So people will have to suffer before they wake up. Is that how it is? Or many people may even die because of what is going on at the moment and what will happen in the coming years. That's what we hear as well with whatever is put into people.
Well, we're looking at some big subjects here, and I realize as I speak that some of what we say may be incomplete or troubling or inadequate to people, but we're doing the best we can, and I think our Q&A is excellent. So I want to say to you, yes, the Gnostics foresaw this evil coming, and one of the most powerful things about Not in His Image is that it goes to the root of this evil. It exposes the root. The Gnostics knew what the root would be, the origin. They knew what the origin was. They didn't necessarily see the situation today, but they knew the root causes, which are master race ideology. That's the basis of technocracy, by the way. The technocrats like Elon Musk and other people consider themselves to be a master race. Let's face it. The second part of the root is the Messiah, the salvationist message. well, someone is going to come and save us. That's a delusion of the Archons. And the third is the nature of AI itself, the nature of archontic intelligence. So they saw all this at its core. They saw it at its core. They didn't necessarily predict exactly the circumstances of today. There is no better time than now to benefit from what they told us and to overcome these delusions that are implanted in our minds. You know, Carlos Castaneda, whom I have great affinities with, is where a couple of old sorcerers hang around among the cactus and the vultures and having a great time. Carlos Castaneda talked about the flyers, and he was referring to his conception of the Archons, which came to him through the indigenous wisdom of the Toltecs, okay? And he used the term foreign installation. He said, what the Archons do is they install their own mind in our minds. So you have a foreign installation in your mind. Why are all these people obeying the authorities when any person with even a mediocre level of intelligence who looks at the facts can see that it's all a scam? Why are they obeying them? Because of fear and because they have a foreign installation in their minds.
Do you think it is because they're vibrating on a certain frequency level, or because they are being hit with a certain kind of, maybe a frequency of an AI frequency or something, in order, and they receive that frequency where some of us, we just don't? I mean, it's difficult to fathom that people cannot see what is actually going on. Why they believe it? Why do you think that is?
There's a lot of speculation about these frequencies and so forth. And there's no doubt that the covert military, three-letter agencies, and all the other sadistic, insane people who developed this technology certainly have weapons of that kind. This is a reality to take into account. But fundamentally, for me, that's not the key issue. That's not what liberates us. What liberates us is simply knowing that what we have been taught and told is wrong, and we need to correct it. And anyone can do that. A 10-year-old child can do that. So the danger is not in these frequencies and in sort of this invisible threat coming through the atmosphere. The danger is in what we have been taught and told. And when we break out of that, then we wake up, and then we can do something about defeating this horrific crime. Never been in the whole course of human history anything like this happened. And it ain't over yet. You're living as the crime is in progress. What an opportunity. There's no better time to be alive than now.
It would be wonderful if more people would wake up and see it so we could change it, because it's even more, let's say, confrontational for those of us who've been talking about this for years and been so-called awake, if you will.
Well, in my view, Lucas, it's not a quantity. I use the word quantum. What is required to change this event and turn life toward truth, freedom, beauty, love, innocence is just a quantum of power held by a certain number of people. Doesn't have to be a big quantity of power. Although I must say that there are certainly going to be mass uprisings, and there are mass uprisings now, popular uprisings, and this is a really good thing. However, the rage and grief and anger of people needs to be directed toward the proper target. You need to know who the enemies of life are. And the Gnostic method of learning shows you exactly who the enemies of life are.
And that's the Archons, huh?
It is not the Archons. It is those who have surrendered themselves to the delusion and illusion of the Archons and are acting it out. If there were no human beings who acted out the deception of the Archons, there would be nothing there. You see? We are the proxies, particular particular ethnic groups are the proxies of the archons. And this is also explicitly described in the Gnostic material. So it's not Sophia's fault that we allow that deception to happen. That's our responsibility. So we wake up from the deception and take responsibility for leading the world into what I call the beauty to come. There is beauty and freedom like we've never had it before. You know, one of the problems of the human animal is that we're creatures of habit. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely.
And so we've had it good, especially in the Western world, you know, we've had it good. And unfortunately, if you take that for granted, something eventually is going to go wrong. In the beauty to come, on the other side of this crime, you will never take for granted any freedom, any pleasure that you have in life. You will treasure it for what it is, more than you ever did before.
Because you'll be slave bound?
No, I don't. I think I might not have gotten across to you in the right way. You would be free of enslavement.
But not take anything for granted.
Yeah, not take anything for granted, like the beauties of life. Like you can't even go out to a restaurant now with friends. You can't dance, you know. Think about how much we enjoyed those things and we took it for granted. When we get them back, when the recovery comes, we will treasure those things so much because we saw the possibility of losing them.
Is that the reason why they're doing this great reset? And they've probably been doing those great resets many times, right, in history?
Well, they're working on this program. The core, the current historical core of this great deception and crime goes back to 1666 and a certain figure called Sabbatai Zevi. You can go back further in history and track it back. I've tracked it back all the way to religion, which is the Zadokim sect of the Hebrews. But if you want to go the short route, track it ahead from 1666. And yeah, they've been working on it for a long time. But what they needed was archonic technology. And it's only in the last 30 years that they have the high-tech archonic technology, AI, robotic machines, surveillance machines. And so the technocrats, I call them the globalist overlords, in their delusion, in their dementia, they think that they can use these AI tools to totally control the whole world. But they can't.
And they actually have a robot called Sophia.
Yeah, I know. I did a talk on that a couple of years ago about the fraud of the robot Sophia.
Would you say that the Archons are AI in a way?
AI should mean archontic intelligence, not artificial. You see, there's no such thing as artificial intelligence, my friend. Intelligence is not artificial. Look at yourself. Look at your fingerprints. Look at your ability to speak. Look at human culture. Look at the animal worlds. All intelligence is alive. Archontic intelligence is not alive. But they believe, because they are the agents of the delusion of the Archons, that they can run the entire world on MS-DOS. And we ain't designed to run on MS-DOS. I've said this many times. We're beautifully designed in emotion and intelligence to run on another system. And Gnosis puts you on that system.
And the word Archon means ruler and master. And also the word Archon is part of words such as monarch, and
right.
hierarchy. Right? It's also part of it. But in ancient Greece, there were actually a group of rulers who were called Archons, right? Archontes.
Yeah, they're the ones who condemned Socrates. They were the Archons of Athens. In the language of that time, it simply meant the governor. The governors of Athens. There was a board of governors, the Archons, the 40 Archons. And they famously condemned Socrates because he was a wise ass and defied the authorities, you see.
And this is actually what is also on Wikipedia. If people look for the word Archon, then you will go into ancient Greek culture and that civilization, and then you will see that the word Archon was a group, a real group, right? I mean, living people.
Right, but they were not like the archonic agents of today. You see, the word Archon has a legal meaning in government, and it also has this supernatural meaning, which is the alien parasite mind. So the Archons today living among us are psychopaths and control freaks who are actually running on the archonic mindset. They don't have a human mind anymore. They are not humane. Look at this COVID scam. Can you imagine anything more inhumane in your whole life? Everything about it is based on fear, constant fear, and stripping away the humanity of people, the common, simple humanity. That is the ultimate death blow of the Archons. They are trying in their final game to take humanity down.
So would you agree with people like David Icke and many others who have talked about the reptilian race, an alien race from the Draco system, or maybe other systems, who came here to Earth and can maybe even shapeshift and be behind these political figures that we see, who are possessed by Archons, who are interdimensional, huh?
Excuse me for being an arrogant smartass, but based on my training, I don't buy that. That's make-believe embellishment. It doesn't really lead anywhere. It's like fantasy material. You know, the Gnostic myth of Sophia makes it clear that the Archons do not come from Draco or from any other star. They are unique within our solar system.
Only in our solar system.
Only in our solar system, yes.
So what about alien races then? Reptilian or whatever?
What about alien races? You know, the worst alien race is the race that is producing the Soviet technocratic nightmare. And if you can't see who that race is, you got no business talking about alien races elsewhere in the universe.
But could those be reptilian, possessed by Archons?
Okay, the specific intel of the narrative of Sophia says that the Archons emerged in two forms. One form is like a drone, which is described as a prematurely born fetus. So that is the gray alien Archon, the big head, spindly limbs. That's what a prematurely born fetus looks like, doesn't it? It has a big head and spindly limbs. They said, though, that aspect of the Archon species is the drone aspect, and that there is also an overlord aspect in their mindset. They have a hive mentality, but they also have an overlord function in that mentality. And they describe the overlord function as Dracon or draconic. So there is in the Gnostic intel, and nowhere else to my knowledge, an explicit description of a reptilian type and a gray alien type.
So that goes very much hand in hand with what David Icke and other people have said. And also, you've mentioned this, and this is also in the Gnostic writings, right, found in Nag Hammadi, where it is explained that this Archon empire, they also have a king called the Demiurge.
Oh, the Demiurge is the name for the Lord Archon, or the head of the hive mind. The hive mind has like a central nervous system, and that is the Demiurge.
So is that like the AI superbrain computer that we talk about in other terms?
Yeah, what you have in the AI superbrain computer is a machine that has been created by demented people with grandiose ideas of themselves. And they actually believe in their delusion that they are going to run the world on this AI machine. And that's not going to happen. But we can only be sure it doesn't happen when the time comes to take it down, to take down the archonic system of authorities on this planet. And that time is now. It's now or never.
So would you say that the demiurge is real? Can this king of the archons manifest in physical form? Some people also talk about it being reptilian, in that it looks like a reptilian, or the devil, how the devil is well depicted. Or can it possess a public figure, for example? Or, I mean, how is it done? How does it work?
To answer that question, so important, that question, in the most concise way, I would say this: the Archon overlord, the demiurge, whom the Gnostic called Yaldabaoth, is described as reptilian, right? Dracon. But it's really only a figure of speech. It's actually an allusion to something, an allusion to something else. So if you take it literally and you think, well, if they achieve their goal and there is an Archon Messiah who is the judge of the world and the controller of everything, is it going to appear like a reptilian entity? Right? This is something that many people wonder about. No, it doesn't have to. You see, that's misleading to let your imagination picture it appearing in that way is misdirection. It's a misdirection of the archontic delusion. It doesn't have to appear as a reptilian.
How about in human form then?
They have already embodied themselves in human form. And this is the key to the reptilian trope. A Gnostic would say to you that if you look at the human body and you look at the skeletal structure of the nervous system and the brain, you have, of course, a kind of reptilian form inside the body. You have your spine with the tail of your spine, which is the tail of the serpent, and you have the serpent in the body coming up to the back brain. And we were talking about Kundalini at the beginning, right? The serpent power. So there is a serpent reptilian form already in the body.
But some people say that we are a hybrid cloned slave race, a mixture of mammalian and reptilian because of the reptilian brain. Some people talking about a peace treaty between Lemuria and Atlantis in ancient civilizations also. And then they created this cloned slave race called Homo sapiens, or human beings.
That is an unfortunate piece of disinformation. It is an extremely damaging and I would say disturbing narrative that was intentionally introduced to the world some years ago through Zecharia Sitchin, and who was, by the way, an agent of the archonic powers. Look at his ethnicity.
Some people say that he took part in rituals. I know that David Icke interviewed a lady called Arizona Wilder who claimed to have been a mind-controlled victim and said that she had seen Sitchin at these Illuminati rituals. I don't know if there's any truth to this, but you also claim that he was not quite what he said he was, or what?
No, he was not the scholar that he said he was. He was an asset for the archonic authorities to plant this slave species narrative. And I completely reject the slave species narrative. I've talked about this a great deal, and I give the reasons why. We are not a slave species, but if you teach people that they are, what are the consequences going to be? People become what they believe. So getting back to the serpent in the body, I said that the reptilian form of the ultimate archontic ruler is not necessarily a reptilian in the literal sense. They have already become reptilian in their neurological and spinal structure. You see, the Archons did not achieve an alien-human hybrid. According to my information, I could be wrong. I'm not the Pope. I'm not infallible, but I stand strongly on this view.
Neither is he, dare I say.
Right. But you see, they did achieve a neural hack. This is what you need to understand. What is a neural hack as distinguished from a genetic hybrid? So they never, the Gnostic materials say this, and I cite it in Not in His Image. They said the Gnostics attempted to rape Eve, which means that they attempted to interbreed with humanity, but they failed. So, but they succeeded at doing something else, which is that they hacked into the neurological circuits of a particular group of people at a particular time.
And who are they?
They were the so-called Hebrews of the Old Testament. And this story is described in their book, the Bible. This encounter, the encounter of Abraham with Melchizedek, is the event that describes how the Archons intruded into our world. They used something called HAL, H-A-L, which is a virtual reality. And this is a power that they have. So, for instance, we know today that there are virtual reality games, right? You put on a headset and you go into a room, you're given a pair of skis or a tennis racket, and you play tennis in the virtual. And some people might think that's just as good as playing it in real life, right? So the Archons can create that kind of virtual reality illusion. And they did this. They projected into the human atmosphere of the planet, into the atmosphere, a certain entity called Melchizedek, which was a perfect replicant of a human being, but it wasn't human. It was a simulacrum, a replicant. And through that being, they communicated to Abraham. And that was the first step of achieving this neural hack. So at that moment, in a way that I've described elsewhere, too technical to explain now, they actually introduced into the brain, through the ears and the mucous membranes, a type of nanobot, parasites. It's remarkable that certain people today, you're getting the joke here, right? It's remarkable that certain people today, conscientious seekers, are saying, they're warning us that someone is trying to prick us and to introduce into our bodies a kind of serum that contains actually nanobite particles that are going to take over our genetics and our mind. Have you heard that story? That was already done 3,800 years ago. But it was only done to a particular group, which I call the tribal vector. So when the Archons had to achieve that intrusion into the neurological and genetics, that is what they did, but it's not an interbreeding. There is no alien-human hybrid.
But you just talked about replicants. That sounds very much like like shapeshifters, or could be.
Well, they say, the Gnostics say, that the Archons are shape shifters. But, what are you to make of that? Well,
They can take another form.
look at, what kind of shape shifting are you talking about? Now, if you're a shaman in the tradition of Castaneda or South America, you can shapeshift into a puma or into a condor or into another animal. That's the traditional idea of shapeshifting, which is a beautiful, magical thing that belongs to Sophia's world. But their kind of shapeshifting is nothing else but disguises and fraudulent masks. Philanthropy, humanitarians, that's shapeshifting. The Archons are behind the mask of humanitarianism. They're behind the mask of the WHO and all these institutions and organizations which tell you that they are doing the best for humanity. That's the shapeshifting you want to watch out for.
Definitely, but you would say that nothing can change form physically. I mean, we all DNA and we're made of atoms, and atoms have no solidity. So holographically in structure, if we can call it that, then it could possibly change form. A sophisticated hologram, that is, of course.
Well, in the first place, we are not hologrammic. Organic life is not hologrammic. Something that you hear often, which I object to strongly, obviously I object to a lot of things, is we're living in a simulation. That is a complete delusion in itself to even say that.
So you don't feel that we are living in a simulation?
Absolutely not. No.
So would you not agree that we are 3D material beings, three-dimensional, meaning manifestations of consciousness in human physical form inside a dream reality? We talked about this being a dream reality earlier on in the show. Is this reality an absolute dream state manifestation, like a computer game existence, that we perceive as being real, which we experience through our five senses in order to create the illusion of realness, a dream within the matrix? What are your thoughts?
It is not a computer game simulation. It is a living dream. It's alive. It's a living dream. Her world in which we exist is a living dream. It's material. Everything is material. And everything that your senses detect is real and true. It's not a simulation.
But still, atoms have no solidity. So if you go really, really close to an atom, it dissolves. It doesn't exist. And only when you go away from it, you will see the bigger picture. And then it can manifest in physical form. That's basically science, isn't it?
No, it's junk science. It's a bunch of abstract ideas. The atom is just a model of something. There are many, several intelligent examples of people who completely debunk the theory of the atom. Do you know what the definition of life is in Sophia's mind? How does she define life? Not how science defines life, atomic structure and all this. How does she, who is the source of life, define life? It is the electrified animation of colloids. Colloids. That's what it's all about, not atomic structure, colloids. Colloids are like clusters of living molecular units. Like everything in your body your cells are an expression of colloids. The mist in the sky is an expression of colloids. The stream of water running in river is an expression. Colloids are living molecular structures that have no atomic structure within them. What sustains them is not atomic structure. What sustains them is the imagination of the goddess.
But we are manifesting or vibrating on a three-dimensional plane, so that we are in a 3D reality. How would you describe then 4D or the fifth dimension and further up maybe? Where are the archons? Where are the souls or ghosts or maybe other interdimensional beings? Is that in the fourth dimension or the fifth dimension, in another realm that is not in this 3D reality?
I think I better go out and check for the next bus to Copenhagen.
You're welcome. I'd love to welcome you here.
Listen, We could talk for 16 hours about that. I've written about the 9 dimensions or 10 dimensions of the universe. The 10th dimension is eternity, which is now. This is eternity. And then the 9 dimensions are the structures in which eternity has to break down so that we can experience all of its facets. You see? So we live in the 4th dimension now, and there is a 5th, 6th, and the 7th, and I've written a lot about that, and it really gets into things that would be difficult for us to cover adequately here.
But like Nikola Tesla says, if you want to know the key to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So everything is vibrating on a frequency, right? It is the same.
But that's just language. That's just jargon. Vibration, frequency. What do you actually feel as a living entity? Don't you feel like right now, for instance, how moist is your body?
Well, pretty hot is pretty hot in the studio here.
Normally, I've asked that to a woman before because, it makes sense. But I'm asking you, how wet are you? How wet are you getting? But, your brain is like a Kleenex. Do you know that? Your brain right now, as you're talking to me, is like a wet mass of Kleenex filled with electrical circuits. This is life. Everything is material. It's all water, electricity. There's this language about frequencies and everything becomes to me abstract, and it distracts from the actual material reality and the sensory reality. Everything you sense is real. There's no illusion in Sophia's dreaming. It's a living dream.
But if you even say, oh, vibration, frequencies, and all of that, and you talk about everything being real, then how would you argue that what you're saying, what you know of the gnosis and the stories and the texts found in Nag Hammadi, how is that real? How do we know that? And you, of course, talk a lot about Sophia. And how do you really explain the concept of Sophia? You talk about it being a feminine energy. Am I correct in understanding that Sophia is a kind of representation of the human soul, but also the feminine aspect of God?
No.
In whatever way God can be explained.
No.
Yeah.
Sophia is the earth.
Gaia.
Her body is the earth. The air you breathe in the biosphere is part of her body. You're breathing her body. You're a cell in the body of the earth. She's not some representation of something otherworldly. She is our world. She is your life. She is your mother. You know that you have a physical mother, right? A biological mother. I don't know if she's still alive or not.
Yes, she is.
So you can go right now, you could leave here today and go and have dinner with your mother. Well, Sophia is just as real as your biological mother.
So what you're talking about is planet Earth, right? Gaia.
Yes.
And this is how you described as being, we say Mother Earth. So this is how you explain Sophia. But you just put a name to it and make it more human-like in a way.
It's not human-like. Do you think the planet looks like a human being?
It's in order for the viewers to really understand what your and how you're talking, how they can even understand what these words mean.
Well, it takes time. Gnosis is a discipline. If you want to really mean to learn, as the Bee Gees said, do you really want to know, or do you really mean to learn? Do you know about that lyrics of the Bee Gees song? It was a Mandela effect. So if you really mean to learn, then it's like anything else. You've got to put commitment and determination into it to become familiar and comfortable with the things that I'm saying, speaking as a Gnostic. It just doesn't happen like that. It's like if you want to become a botanist, a nurse, a leather worker, you have to learn the art of Gnosis in the same way. But one thing that I can make absolutely clear to you from the beginning is that you don't have to know anything except that you're alive to know and love the goddess Sophia. When you know things such as I discuss, arcane, esoteric subjects, questions about, that's just human culture. I have an intellectual culture. So my intellectual culture is real to me. You can test it and prove it. That's why I have confidence in it. But you don't need intellectual culture to recognize the source of life.
But you've actually written in your book yourself, and I quote, Sophia fell into her own dreaming. And you also say, Sophia falls, not humanity. The Gnostics did not say that human beings have fallen into this world from a more perfect condition. So if human beings are not, let's say, an alien cloned hybrid slave race that acquired a soul by accident, perhaps, which was not part of the experiment, some researchers say, would you say that we humans are a real evolutionary miracle?
What do you prefer to be? If you had the choice, what would you prefer to be?
Well,
a magnificent expression of a living dream, of a sublime, feminine, divine power that is present around you all the time, that reaches you through her frequencies, that you can reach and meet? Or do you want to be a slave species of an alien human hybrid? Take your pick.
well, definitely not. But what a lot of the people who even talk about this, human beings being a cloned slave race, they also said that something unexpected happened, which they did not know would happen back then, and that was that human beings acquired a soul, and that a soul entered the body, and we got something called empathy, and that from that we became more organic, and that it is basically consciousness in a soul that takes, and we take form in a physical body until the soul leaves the body.
Hey, show me the evidence. Do you have empathy? You, Lucas.
Of course.
Have you ever met anyone who doesn't?
Yes, I think we all have.
Those are the psychopaths and the archonified human beings. But the fact that they don't have empathy, and they show it by their cruel and insane behavior, wouldn't you agree? The fact that they don't have empathy is due to it being, due to losing it because of their delusion in the archonic mindset. We had empathy from the beginning, and some of us have never lost it, you see? We didn't acquire it later on. Empathy is essential. Empathy and self-love are the root of human consciousness. See?
But when they talked about souls entering or becoming part of the human race, this is of course eons, I don't know how long ago. And it's not what I say, but this is an important part of the discussion. What is the soul? What is the soul being when we die? What happens to us when we die? Where do we go? Do we go into a karma wheel reincarnation soul trap created by the Archons?
There has been so much crap and bullshit created by the human mind out of a basic ignorance of the fundamentals of life. I promise you that if you are in touch with the fundamentals of life in your senses, in your recognition of the presence of the Mother Source, then you can know things that are worth knowing, you see? And not become distracted and misled by all of these, I call it fantasy material.
But what if that is a knowing? an absolute knowing. A lot of near-death experiencers, so many thousands even, who doesn't even know each other or believe in the same belief system or whatever, they talk about these experiences. And what about
A close friend of mine had a near-death experience. What I like about the near-death experiences and the testimonies is there is evidence. What Sophia wants us to say in the process of trying to know things is, show me the evidence. Show me the evidence.
But if it's metaphysical, how can you show anybody any evidence? If you had a near-death experience, how can you show anybody any evidence? Except if you were out of body or declared dead, and then you could hear what was happening on the operating table. And people talk about them going out of body, seeing a lot of things and coming back and explaining it. That is, of course, what I would definitely call evidence.
That is damn good evidence. It is anecdotal evidence, but it is damn good. But if you're going to speculate about metaphysical events and dimensions for which there is no evidence, then you're completely wasting your time. I would say if there is no evidence for the metaphysical, maybe there is no metaphysical.
So what evidence do we have that the Archons exist?
We have the evidence in the influence that they are directly exerting upon us. That's the evidence. In the force they exert upon us through psychological warfare, through lies, deception, mind control. That's the evidence of the presence of the Archons working through their human proxies.
But a lot of people would probably just say that these are just an evil ruling elite, a deep state maybe, that has orchestrated the New World Order agenda. And a lot of them are psychopaths, a lot of them want to climb to the top, and some of them are in the royal bloodlines, and they're just human beings being maybe psychopaths. No empathy.
They are human beings demented by the archontic mindset.
But there's still no evidence of the Archons, are there? There are of the ruling elite and of, them being not very empathetic.
Their presence and their behavior is the evidence of the Archons. Can't you see that?
But you were just talking about that. What evidence do we have of the metaphysical and what is happening when we die, and other realms as well, and an alien species maybe? I mean, that a lot of people also in this field come out and talk about.
But they're not metaphysical. There's nothing metaphysical about the Archons. By the way, there is no metaphysics in Gnosis. So I welcome you to investigate it. And one thing that you may find happily as a great relief is that there's no metaphysics. Metaphysics is completely useless.
So what we're really talking about, them being interdimensional, huh?
It's a word. Where do you go with it? What's the takeaway? What's the point of being interdimensional?
If you, as an interdimensional being, an Archon, can possess a human being and orchestrate something that we are part of right now, which is this terrible situation that the whole world is in, and this globalization plan, and the UN Agenda 21, 2030, New World Order that they have talked about for so long. This is basically what we're all part of right now, whether or not it is an archontic hijack or if it's just a ruling elite that wants to control the masses.
The Gnostic would say that it cannot be reduced to simply control freaks and human beings who have grandiose designs to control and enslave others. The degree and magnitude of this evil, human evil, is such that there is a non-human factor in it. So if we were just left to ourselves without the archonic influence on this planet, we would never have come to a moment as dangerous as this, because human beings in their own nature cannot do that to each other. There has to be a paranormal element working in them to bring them to that behavior. This is a really strong point that I made in Auden's image.
So you would say that psychopaths and sociopaths does not exist in the way that psychology explains it. They are possessed by archons, or are archons in human form.
No, I would say that psychopathy and sociopathic behavior is something that could occur in the course of human development over the centuries if certain people lost their empathy, their natural empathy. Now, it begs the question, well, why would certain people in a country or time suddenly lose their empathy and then become psychopathic? But that's not the point of the Gnostic message. The point of the Gnostic message is the exaggeration and intensification of this lack of empathy is evidence of something that is non-human.
But somebody could be born in a family, say two brothers, and one is turns out to be a psychopath, and they can even sense that at a very, very early age. Maybe they were even born with it, I don't know. And then the other one is, let's say, normal and have empathy, and they have the same upbringing and the same parents. How do we explain that?
Exactly. You know, no one to my knowledge has explained that, and I can't explain that. So if we talk about something that might be called a natural occurrence of empathy in the human races, that's something very interesting to study. But this lack of empathy, this sadistic, monstrous deception is beyond human. You cannot understand it unless you factor in the paranormal alien element. That is one of the most important things I explain in Auden's image.
Absolutely. And how could they, if there is this archontic force, an alien force, orchestrating the whole New World Order agenda and everything we are exposed to and enslaved by at the moment, why would they not operate outside of this three-dimensional frequency here and hijack the souls, our souls, human beings' souls, at the point of death, maybe going into this white light frequency that religious people talk about being heaven, and then maybe you see whatever you believe, God or Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha, and you see a life review, and then reincarnation, going back to this earthly realm, maybe a prison planet, obviously, within the matrix, in a new body with a wiped memory. Would that not be the ultimate trap when we leave the body at the point of death? What are your thoughts on that?
I see what you're getting at. I know that this has been elaborated in that way, that the prison planet matrix and the chain of reincarnation is caused by our archontic capture. Okay, it's a very, very big subject. I would just say that in the Nag Hammadi, there's a passage that says, whoever does not know what happens after death while they are still alive will not experience anything when they die. So whatever happens after death, you can speculate about it, you can talk about the chain of reincarnation and all that, but whatever happens, if you really want to know, well, you can know before you die what happens after death.
How will you get that knowing?
You get that knowing through the practice that the Gnostics themselves followed in the mystery cells. You go into the presence of the Aeon Sophia. You surrender totally to the power and beauty of her presence, and then you are both alive and dead at the same time. You know what it feels like when you won't be here anymore, and yet you're still here. And this is an experience that cannot be constructed. It cannot be intellectually attained. You have to have that experience raw and firsthand, and then you know.
And can you practice that through meditation or lucid dreaming, if you really focus on being able to go into lucid dreaming more and navigate in that. And at the point of death, can you choose then consciously wherever you want to go, if you want to go to Source, God, Creator, or other planetary realms, or what can you choose? Can you just choose at will?
It's beyond will. The act of surrender that the Gnostics described in certain passages, the act of surrender before the organic light, which is the naked body of the Aeon Sophia, is such that you lose all distinctions and you lose your identity, yet you know more fully than ever what it is to be alive, because you are alive in the wholeness of her presence. You see, these are mystical experiences that can only be had firsthand. I'm even somewhat reticent, to talk about them in this way. But the method, I can't speak for lucid dreaming, Lucas, because I'm not qualified to talk about it. Maybe people have achieved things. I have not achieved much in the deliberate practice of lucid dreaming that you're talking about, right? No, I only use the Gnostic method, which is to rely on the assistance of psychoactive plants to take you to the presence of the organic light. That is the Gnostic practice and the only one.
So are you talking about shamanism here, saying that as a shaman yourself, I think, would you say that you can obtain or acquire knowledge that is greater than anything else by doing a ritual where experimental drugs or what they call plant medicine as well is not involved, or does it have to be involved? I mean, taking mind-expanding, mind-altering substance or plants to acquire this knowledge.
The standards of shamanic practice in Gnosticism are rigorous and clear, and they're simple. And I put a lot of effort into setting them out. You don't use drugs. You don't use synthetic substances of any kind. Primarily use psilocybin mushrooms.
But couldn't those be very dangerous for a lot of people, also who are maybe not into it or unbalanced in their psyche or a little bit scared of it? I mean, some people have not really returned from such a magic mushroom trip. Like some people have not really become themselves again after having had some ayahuasca experiences, huh?
It's a technique. It's a particular technique. And if you don't follow the technique, then the experiences you have could be anything. They could be hilarious. You could have party time. They could be devastating. They could traumatize you for the rest of your life. If you follow the Gnostic technique, which is called the telestic method, then you go straight to beauty. You go straight to source. And yes, you can know things that are of a divine and transcendent nature. That is what Gnosis is. But you do not only know them with the use of psychoactive plants, you also know them in ordinary consciousness as well. You have it both ways.
So would you advocate, people taking this plant medicine when they do shamanistic rituals, or not even that?
No, I would not advocate anyone consuming psilocybe mushrooms unless they do it in the rigorous technique of this practice. I am completely against the recreational, reckless, and aimless ingestion of any substances, be they natural or synthetic. I'm completely against that.
So please also explain to the viewers, what is teleste? What is a teleste? Teleste, I think it is pronounced. This also goes into ancient mysteries, right?
I've sort of I discovered the word teleste in the Greek Gnostic material. I'm very happy to say that I've been able to restore it and bring it into current parlance. But people use it today, and they know what they're talking about. So it comes from the Greek root telos or telos, meaning aim, purpose, objective. So the telestes, that's the singular name, is someone who is aimed. They have a purpose. They have a goal. And the teleste is the plural of that name. So the Gnostics called themselves teleste, meaning we who are aimed. They did not call themselves Gnostics, which was an insult of their enemies, and it means a smartass or a know-it-all, like me. See? So it's important to know what they called themselves and not what they were called, sort of like with the Nazis. You know, it's important to know what they call themselves and not what they were called.
You've said and explained that, in your opinion, Satanism is not real Satanism in the way that has been corrupted by the Bible and perhaps used for control purposes by the church. You have talked about something you called salon Satanists. I guess horror mixed with gross and opulent decadence used by the Illuminati in rituals and in symbolism. And you talk about Lucifer, the satanic hero. But if Satanism is not what we are led to believe, then what is Luciferianism and Saturnian Satanism?
Well, you know, suppose you and I are a couple of detectives, and a boss comes to us one day and he says, okay, Lucas and John, I got to put you guys on a crime case. This is a very difficult case. You have to go solve what Satanism is. And we said, okay, we're up for it. We like a challenge. But, you know, the head of the department, the head detective says, well, I'm sure you two can do this because you're pretty smart guys and you have a passion for the truth. But I have to tell you that you have to go and start over there in that room. And over there in that room are files and cases and documents and testimony that have been accumulated for hundreds of years about Satanism. So we go over and we go in the room and we look around and we think, what? We have to go through all of this, all of these different definitions of Luciferian, Satan, different practices in order to solve the problem of what Satanism is. This is going to be impossible. It's what I call the problem of corrupt files. There are so many corrupt files about Satanism that it's almost impossible to sort it out in any kind of way with a clear takeaway. Okay? Now, I didn't write some of those things you just quoted. I don't know where they came from. I'm very careful to talk about satanic rites.
This was just part of my question, basically, but I know that you have said that Satanism, in the way that it's been explained or that we think it is not really true. And you talk about the satanic hero. You've also mentioned Lord Byron and his decadent lifestyle.
Yeah, I did a whole series on YouTube called The True Lucifer is Sophia. And I talked about the Romantic movement and how Satan, the mythological Satan, was like the archetype of the rebel. You know, this is just one of the tropes of Satanism. There are so many tropes. You know, there's the parasites who eat children for adrenochrome. And then there is Lord Byron and the Romantic poets, who are these stylish, brilliant intellectuals who are satanic in the sense that they are against all authority. You know, it's a huge...
But why is that satanic?
It's satanic because the word simply means adversarial, a rebel, to be a rebel.
Really? It does?
Yeah, that's all it means. It's all it meant to Byron and the people of his time. That's all it means. The other heavy-duty associations attached to it belong to all those files in that room, you see. But basically, I want to go back to a point that I made. If you want to know the root of Satanism as it operates in the world today, go back to 1666 and the Sabbatean Frankish heresy. That is the concrete, volatile expression of Satanism, and the evidence of it is everywhere you look. So I would say go to the most immediate problem of Satanism. That's it.
And that's where you will find the reason for, let's say, the Illuminati and those deep state factions doing these satanic rituals and the symbolism that we find all over, basically.
Yeah, if they are doing them, I myself have not seen what I consider to be 100% convincing evidence, 100%. But if they are doing them, what are they doing? Are they doing them because they are worshiping a bat-like, goat-footed figure who lives in another dimension? No, you don't need a bat-like, goat-footed figure in another dimension to be sick and demented and psychopathic. It's within human capacity under the archontic influence. They're just playing games. They're ugly, cruel games, but to my mind, they're just games.
Yeah, but they're doing them, and they're doing them to children.
Yes, they are. I totally agree. I think the evidence for that is convincing.
You've even claimed that the ritual during Christmas, well, Christ Mass, you say that the little child Jesus that people worship, Christmas, Christ being born, that's actually a tribute to child sacrifice.
That is true. I did say that. Christianity is based on child sacrifice, and so is Judaism. And that's in the evidence. It's obvious because that child in the manger, you're supposed to imagine it as being the perfect human, right? Perfect innocence. But what happens to that child? It gets tortured. It gets pricked by nails. So why is the divine, beautiful child sacrificed? It's simply another version of child sacrifice. The archetype of Christianity is child sacrifice. And it's so wrong. It's so wrong for us.
But why do you think those elitists are doing these horrific rituals then?
Because they're insane, man.
Yeah, but there must be a purpose for it, for control, to obtain a certain kind of energy, to manifest those entities you talk about, the Archons, whether they manifest as a reptilian, where depicted like the devil, or what? Why do they do this? For power?
They do it because it's a thrill. And it thrills them and excites them. But it doesn't give them any supernatural power. On the contrary, it is the most decadent and perverse behavior that is imaginable. It's a cesspool of depravity, but they love it. They love their cesspool.
Yeah, but absolutely, totally right. But I mean, there must be a reason. A lot of people I've spoken to talk about what is happening at those rituals. Some even talk about them having seen manifestations of deities.
Well, sure. Go back to Aleister Crowley's rituals. Go back to Luther. Luther, who formed the Protestant movement, claims that when he was sitting in his room, the devil appeared to him in physical form, and he threw an inkwell at it. The human imagination, under fear and intensity, can produce actual palpable hallucinations. But I reject the idea that they do these practices in order to acquire power. They don't. They're destroying themselves, and they want to take as many others down with them as they can, because destruction is a thrill. It's a thrill to them. It's their pleasure. But I don't give it any higher purpose. I don't buy that. I think it's speculation and fantasy material. Don't give them that power. Why give them so much supernatural power? They're just perverted control freaks, and they need to be taken out. Period.
Well, a lot of people will probably argue with that on that topic there, because a lot of people who have been, let's say, ex-mind-controlled Illuminati slaves and others have talked about what they do and how this is part of a network where they experience all kinds of supernatural things. So what is to know about this, really? What do you feel it's a knowing for you that they don't do it for supernatural purposes?
I base what I know on evidence, and I haven't seen that evidence. I've heard anecdotal evidence. You know what anecdotal evidence is in court. It's very weak. I don't dismiss it, but I've heard anecdotal evidence and I've heard interpretations about what these rituals are intended to do.
Well, you're not going to see the evidence. You're not going to see that on television. You'll only see it in films, right? As a fictional story, predictive programming, basically, putting it out there in the open. But you're not going to see it in real life because that would expose the whole thing. We don't have evidence for a lot of things, and that's why they have coined the term conspiracy theorists, because they can just dismiss anything that is not evidence or things that can be fact-checked or something like that, which we see a lot happening these days.
Yeah, well, as we know, that tool used by the enemies of life to oppose anyone who's trying to expose them is a very nefarious tool. We know that. But on the other hand, to say that a crime was committed, but there is no evidence of the crime is not a smart way to think.
Well, if there's a whole network of families and people who are missing children that are not being reported.
That is evidence of something really big going on. I agree. That is evidence.
Yeah.
A kind of evidence, but the whole case has not been put together because you don't prove a case in court. Proof is a body of evidence.
Yeah, but that whole court system is created by the same people, the same ruling elite.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not talking about the courtroom as such. I'm talking about property, the faculty of the human mind to prove something. You prove something by gathering evidence and building it into a case. So there is all kinds of evidence.
But there's a lot of evidence, and where will we go with it? A lot of us are trying to expose it, but where can we go with it when you cannot even go to those authorities that are supposed to take care of them?
Well, there is a particular download I got once. I do get downloads from the mother source. It's one of my pretensions, one of my claims. And I got a short and sweet message from one of her powers, known as Bhairavi or Sekhmet, who represents the mother rage, the protective rage of the Earth Mother. And that message was, freedom stands at the end of secrecy. So we could talk for 4 more days about all the things that we suppose might be done in secret. But freedom comes when that secrecy ends. And I ask you this question: how is that secrecy going to end? And how soon is it going to end? Because until that secrecy ends, they will still have an advantage, won't they? A tremendous advantage. But I do strongly believe that secrecy is coming to an end. And this growing body of evidence you mentioned is really important. And I don't discount it, believe me. I don't discount the evidence as far as it goes.
I mean, we certainly could go on for a long time, and we have just about used around 2 hours now, and I would maybe suggest that we do another interview at some point soon, because there are still a lot of things we didn't get to cover in this interview, so it would be wonderful to have you on again so that we can cover more at some point.
Oh, I most certainly would enjoy that. Could I perhaps propose something that I would like to do as in the course of our conversation? I would like to talk about my school, Nemata, and what is a modern mystery school today. and how it works and about the practices of Gnosis, because that's the solution to these things. And I like to balance out a conversation. We've talked a lot about the problem and we've done great, going like wildfire, but balance it out by talking about the solution as well. So if we could do that, I would be most delighted.
Absolutely, I would love to do that, and we can also just, end this interview. We always do that by asking, what is your most important message for people watching this and for the world at the moment? And I get the feeling that you really think that there's hope, and this is what we all want. And hope for that things can change for the better, and hopefully as soon as possible. So before we do a part 2, hopefully soon with you, where we can go more in depth about Gnosis, Gnosticism, mystery schools, and very, very important topics that we didn't get to cover today, please end up today with talking about your most important message for the world and people watching right now.
Sure. I don't use the word hope myself because I think hope is something that can be easily defeated or undermined. I talk about this as an opportunity and a challenge. And every single person who has some idea of what's going on needs to look into themselves and say, okay, am I up for this challenge? It's a great opportunity, but it is quite a difficult challenge. My greatest concern is that those who take on the challenge to defeat the authorities and to overthrow this Soviet technocratic nightmare reach a unity together. No one can do it alone. There has to be a unity of force. And one factor in that unity that I emphasize, which, as far as I know, other so-called spiritual teachers don't, is hate. Hate. The power of hate is a unifying power. And so perhaps we could bring up that dicey subject as well.
Really? You are an advocate, an advocate for hate?
Yes, I am. Hate is a human emotion, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, but how can that possibly be put into good use, or being something that can be applied to anything that could grow and be a good thing?
How could hate be a good thing? Well, do you feel hate for people who recklessly destroy other people's lives?
But isn't that buying into the whole game? Isn't that feeding that whole game, building the whole game?
Hate has a really bad name because it has been said that if you hate someone who is hurting you or wants to kill you or destroy you, you are in some way buying into their negative energy. I totally disagree. Totally. Hate needs to be honored and recognized as much as love. You need hate to protect what you love. You cannot protect what you love with love.
No, but how can you build on anything with hate? That is a satanic energy, huh?
That is your conception of what hate is, but you are condemning that emotion. How can you condemn a basic human emotion?
But isn't that what the Archons want? Then they got to you. Then they got you, didn't they? Then they can really feed on you and work through you. This is what the New World Order elitist wants people to do. Now they also want, through the Hegelian dialectic, to divide and conquer, split people snitching on their neighbors at the moment. This is hate also in full swing.
But it's not the pure power of hate in its pure sense. The Archons do not use hate. The Archons use deception. And by deception, they get people to hate each other, as we see with the masked and the unmasked. You see? No, I'm talking about the moral power of hate. Hate is a moral factor in the human animal. Do you hate deceit? Do you hate liars?
That is an interesting question. I would say that to be strong and to be powerful and to go out there and do the work and to expose yourself to criticism and trying to change the world is a very, very powerful tool, but not very constructively done with hate, but certainly with a pure heart full of love as well. Definitely with love.
Can't there be hate in a pure heart? You see, you have a categorical definition of what hate is. It's bad, it's to be condemned, it's to be rejected. Who taught you that? Or is that something you genuinely feel?
So how would you define hate?
I would define hate as the emotion, the natural emotion that comes to a human animal when they encounter something that negatively impacts their life or interferes with their freedom. It's a natural self-protective emotion. I guess I really dropped a can of worms there. You might want to delete this from the end of the interview.
No, this is fascinating. You are certainly a controversial man, and I'm sure that that a lot of people will find this more than interesting, having watched this. And I'm very excited to do another show with you, hopefully soon, because there's a lot to cover. And you've just released, or very soon it will be re-released, republished, your book, quite famous book, Not in His Image, from 2006, but you've also included so much more. You elaborated, and you doubled up on the material. Is that how it is?
Yeah, I have doubled down on a couple of points. One is about the role of hate, and the other is about the deceit of Christ. So I've really gone to the core, and I've spared no punches. And you can pre-order the book now, and it would be good for me if you pre-ordered it. It will be available on the 18th of September. But if enough people pre-order it and it gets more than 400, it goes to a higher notch on the Amazon ratings, and that's good for me.
So how can people purchase the book or order it, and what's the best way to get in contact with you or to get the new version of Not in His Image?
Okay, you can order it through the usual channels of Amazon or through my publisher in the United States, Chelsea Green. And you can reach me by going to Nemeta, NEMETA.org. That is my mystery school online. And right on the homepage, there's the contact button.
Great. And I'm looking very much forward to have you on again for part 2. But for now, this has been eye-opening, controversial, exciting, and fascinating. And I want to thank you so much, John Lamb Lash, for being on Age of Truth TV. Thank you so much.
I hope I didn't drop a bomb on you at the end by bringing that up, because I didn't want to steer everything off course, because in our way of conversing, we can cover a lot of stuff. You know, if we just hone a little bit more the back and forth, we can go into topics that are really difficult for people and sort them out. I'm really inspired by talking to you.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Likewise to you, Lucas. Thanks for putting up with me. And I'll catch you later.
Thank you so much to John Lamb Lash, and thanks to all of you for watching Age of Truth TV. You can support us by clicking onto our website, ageoftruth.tv. And please like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell for notifications. You can also sign up for our newsletter on our website, ageoftruth.tv as well, so that we can notify you every time we have a new show out. Please also follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. Your support is greatly appreciated, and on behalf of the Age of Truth TV team, we thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.